Hey everyone, this is Nick from DesignWell, here with another episode of the DesignWell podcast. We're coming up on winter, and with heating bills rising across the US, a lot more attention has been placed on the monetary value of warmth and comfort in a home. Nowadays, a healthier, happier home is also a more efficient and therefore less expensive one. There are a few tried and true methods for achieving this. Insulation is and always will be a major factor, but we're here today to talk about insulation of a different variety. Since beginning with Smart PNW, James Roddy has been showing households across the Pacific Northwest just how much of an impact motorized window treatments can have in the home. It always starts with an energy audit, but the goal is safe, comfortable living come fall and winter. While I have James with me today, we'll be talking about how window treatments play into home efficiencies, what they can do for clients, and how he built an entire smart home business around thermal comfort in the home. So, without further ado, let's get on with our conversation. But before we get started, if you end up liking what you hear, be sure to give us a thumbs up or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening in on. Also, feel free to leave a review so we can continue to improve the show. And be sure to check out DesignWell 365 if you haven't already. With that out of the way, let's get into the conversation. James, thank you for coming on to the podcast today.
Yeah, good to be here.
So for our audience, before we get started, why don't you give a brief introduction about yourself and what you do?
Gotcha. So my name is James Roddy. I started a company called Smart PNW, and if you're not from the area, that stands for Pacific Northwest. And we started off originally as an energy testing and auditing company. And then I kind of stumbled into the world of custom window treatments as a solution for fixing energy holes in houses, which tends to be windows.
Yeah, I was thinking that, when I first got introduced to you guys, I figured that was like a very ingenious move to make, being able to being already in the energy auditing sphere, why not also provide the solution people are looking for when it comes to those energy audits? But I was kind of curious, what got you interested in the shading aspect rather than, going into the home insulation and that avenue.
Well, and it's kind of just, I identified a hole in the market. So, we preach up and down here, the number one cause of energy loss is air leakage. It's a phrase I think everybody at my company hears every day because, we believe that, right? When we test a house, the first thing that we do is we set up a blower door test and we run around with a thermal camera and we determine where the high air leakage points are because even from an insulation standpoint, it doesn't matter how good your blanket is. If there's holes in it, you're going to have hot or cold spots. And so, and what we determined too is one of the cheapest things to resolve is air leakage problems. But then the second thing that we identify as an issue would be insulation. And there's plenty of great insulation companies out there that can do drill and fills and do attic insulation and crawl insulation and stuff like that. But the next point to identify now is these windows. And when you run around with a thermal camera, you can tell those windows are 20 to 30% hotter or colder than the indoor wall temperature right next to it. So what's the solution for that? And that's a good window treatment. And you haven't asked a question yet, but the reason we actually use Hunter Douglas is because of their existing relationship with the AERC. That's the Attachments Energy Rating Council. It's a third-party organization funded by the Department of Energy, where Hunter Douglas actually sent a bunch of their different products to determine what the equivalent insulating value is at the window and how much solar heat gain they cut down on. And so we can actually scientifically present to our clients with Hunter Douglas window treatments how much energy saving we can actually apply at their window depending on what product they select.
That's really interesting. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up because I did want to get into sort of, I call it the nerdy aspect of insulation. And that's really just because it's like the hard data that I get so excited over. Um, I sound sarcastic when I sounded sarcastic when I said that, but I'm actually like, it's one of the things that I live for when it comes to like building sciences and all that stuff. But I guess so. Like, let's go a little bit more into that like insulation rating that you were just talking about, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people, if we have integrators that are tuning in to listen, or even designers, I'm not sure how knowledgeable they are in terms of like the insulative properties of blinds.
Right. So a lot of the homes, especially in our market here in the Northwest, where there's a lot of great suburban areas and not a lot of dirt to build new houses, people are spending a lot of money to buy 30, 40, 50-year-old houses. And so the equivalent insulation that you'll find in these walls right now is about R8 to R11. And so with Hunter Douglas, with the AERC ratings, with their patented double honeycomb product, they've got R ratings as high as 7.8, which is the highest I've ever seen to put on a window, right? Like if you have like a standard faux wood blind or something, you might be able to get an R2 out of that. But and then of course we all know that glass as an insulator is a terrible insulator. I mean, you're dealing with decimal point R values. So by being able to put a double honeycomb product on that window, like the Hunter Douglas Duet line, then some of their products have anywhere from 5.6 to 7.8 equivalent R value. And I know I'm throwing a bunch of numbers out there because I geek out on this stuff, but having R8 on your window gets it almost as close to the R value you have in your wall right next to it at R11. And of course, new construction, they're packing R19 in there, but even still going from, 0.2 R value with just the glass to an R8, I mean, your window is significantly more efficient than it was before.
Oh yeah, that's a big change. And I mean, like it is always important to kind of like talk about those numbers, because I feel like in this situation, when you're talking about on a you're kind of pitching this very tangible return on investment. So you want to be able to have the numbers to back that up in this situation, whether it be through like if you're offering thermal comfort, like the R value will definitely factor into that. Or if people do really want to like keep track of their energy bills from month to month, that's also going to be very important.
Right. And one thing that we really harp on here, and I really wish everybody in the energy space would, because it's the reality, is I actually don't sell energy savings from a cost standpoint, right? So when we do an energy audit and we suggest trying to get your house more airtight and then adding some kind of insulation to your windows, and we do make insulation recommendations. If you have R19 in your attic, let's make a plan for getting that to R49. It's just not a service that we offer. But what we try to sell is comfort rather than necessarily energy savings. And when you're more comfortable because you don't have air leakage and you have good insulation at your windows and you have good insulation in your attic and your crawl space, as a consequence, you end up saving money on your energy bills.
Yeah, that's really, I feel like that's really the best way to look at it, especially from a homeowner perspective when you're looking at it. And again, especially in this day and age where a lot of homeowners are really, the sustainability aspect is definitely important to a lot of people from what I've seen. But that's just kind of icing on the cake when you lead it up front with, hey, you're going to feel more comfortable in these spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even in my own home, I have a kind of a test case where my dining room is all windows. I have all these wonderful daylighting windows across one side of the house. I have a skylight in there. I've got this big slider that leads out to my patio. And out here Northwest, the sun hits different. Our elevation's a little bit higher, and the sun just beats onto windows and magnifies. And that room in the summer was, practically unlivable. I mean, it was just such a hot space, and it doesn't matter what you do from a ventilation standpoint or a trying to forced air conditioning standpoint. That room is still always hotter than everything else in the house. So I introduced a window treatment that has a 7.8 equivalent insulation value, and during the hottest part of the day, I we can start talking about automation next. I have those windows automated to close during the hottest part of the day, and then they open up around sunset time frame so we can enjoy all the nice daylighting there in the evening around dinner time. But the room actually stays significantly cooler than it had prior to introducing insulation on my windows.
Yeah, I was actually going to get into the automation after that, because it is really a dance that you have to play almost in these cases, especially when it comes down to, like, you're dealing with like the individual behavioral patterns of the people that you're selling to, because I know one of the biggest trends, especially like within the wellness sphere, is it just all comes down to lighting in the home. And so obviously you want to be getting as much natural lighting coming into the house as possible, but then with that, you also have to manage that solar heat gain that comes with all of this natural lighting coming in. So I'm curious to hear how you think that automation plays into that.
Well, and another added benefit to the shading that I chose in my particular sunroom dining room is Hunter Douglas has a product called Dual Light, which allows us to actually stack a sheer fabric with our regular fabric. And so in the summer, my concern isn't so much about the glass itself heating up and radiating into the house. It's actually trying to cut down on that solar heat gain. So those rays that you see shining on your floor or on your furniture, that actually is what's radiating the heat into your home. If we hit that with a thermal camera, that's where you actually see the percentage temperature gain, and that's what's creating the radiating effect in the room. So if we're able to cut that down with a sheer product or a screen product, which again, Hunter Douglas Dual Light, just product plugging over here, we're actually able to enjoy that daylighting if we're having lunch in there during the day, by bringing down that sheer product, and we're still able to cool off the room by limiting the solar heat gain itself. And that's another value of those AERC ratings, is I can actually see what the solar heat gain cut is depending on what product we put in there, whether we're using a screen shade in white or black, or if we're using a dual light type product like the honeycombs that are sheer fabric.
It's actually really good to know, because one of the things that, like, at least from my perspective, before I started really talking with you on these, my immediate mindset would be, if I'm trying to avoid solar heat gain, I'm just thinking blackout curtains. And obviously that's not what you really want to be doing when you're trying to get that sunlight coming in the first place.
Right. And so as an energy guy, I try really careful not to cross the line of who cares about how it looks as long as you're accomplishing the purpose, right? I'm not, I mean, what I try to really do is think like a designer as much as I think like an energy guy. So where can we mix both worlds? And again, this is why I love Hunter Douglas, because I feel like they've really found a place where these two worlds collide. Like, I mean, I'm never going to recommend that you put a blackout product in your living room or your beautiful sunny dining room or anything like that. Blackout products are intended for the bedrooms, and light filtering products are intended for the living spaces. And that really is kind of where, to go back to your earlier question, if we could get into automation on these products where we can maximize where you're adding your window and at what time of day, and we can do all that through automation and programming through Hunter Douglas's PowerView motorized products. And I'm a firm believer in introducing automation rather than doing it the old Minnesota style of, we close our windows during the day, we open them at night, or flip the season, we open our windows during the day and close them at night. And it's just a routine that you do every day walking around the house. And that's what we think about in the automation world, is what are you doing every single day? And how can we save you that 10 minutes a day by just making it happen?
Right, exactly. And I feel like it's definitely, I mean, if it almost makes sense that, like, if you're already in some of these houses, they're already getting set up with these automated lighting systems in a way, like it would almost make sense to be able to then kind of put this on top of those lighting systems? Because a lot of times, I know at the very least within luxury high-end integrations, you have a lot of circadian lighting being put in place, and those are already being designed to operate based on the time of day and based on just sunlight levels at the time of day. So it would make sense that to then you can just add on motorized window treatments as kind of like a back end to that.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel that way too, because I stumbled into the central lighting world after stumbling into the window treatment world. Is that like, what's the point in controlling all of your the circadian rhythms with your indoor lighting if you're still just letting the sun do what the sun wants to do? And so, in my mind, I think you start with window treatments and then you start thinking about the way you control your lighting.
Now, I'm actually kind of curious, and I'm not doing this. Well, I'm just very curious about. You had mentioned the Hunter Douglas honeycomb shading, and I'm interested in how they're able to kind of like achieve that level of like insulation with that shading.
So, the secret's been out for a long time about honeycomb type window treatment products. They create a natural insulating pocket, which is why I'm very careful when I use the phrase equivalent insulation value, because
Mhm.
obviously if you were to press those flat, then you no longer have a true insulating value. But I mean, the same thing could be said for, bats of insulation. If it's designed to be a 5.5 inch thick bat to get R19, if you press that flat, you no longer have R19. And so it's equivalent insulating value. But they have these insulating pockets on the inside of them, and then Hunter Douglas discovered and proved their theory using the AERC that by adding a second honeycomb layer within that honeycomb, it doesn't create a true doubling of the insulating equivalent insulation value, but it does actually increase how much insulation that window treatment is able to provide at your window. And what it is, it's essentially just air pockets that are a different temperature than the temperature being radiated from the glass, competing with the temperature that's being controlled inside the room. And it essentially just slows it down. R in insulation is just, extreme shorthand for resistance. And so it's thermal resistance.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. Going back to what we were talking about a little bit, because you had mentioned, about the design aspect when it comes to these shades. I'm very curious because there's this constant conversation going on within the home technology sphere about this kind of I guess like merging of the two worlds almost, where technology and design is coming together, not just in terms of like the way technology is being designed, but in terms of integrators and designers are becoming a lot more collaborative on these projects. So I'm curious if, when trying to pick these window treatments, obviously insulation is first and foremost. You want to make sure that's in there. But do you have anybody in-house that works as kind of like a design consultant for you guys to figure out what fits best in a room?
Absolutely. And so when I say I try to think like a designer, I'm so not a designer. I mean, I can tell you, hey, let's put automated window treatments on there. Hey, let's use this one because it's going to have this kind of insulating value. But then when you want me to help you pick what white, they all look white to me, but Hunter Douglas has 22 different versions of white, And so I will tell clients that I have an in-home design consultant, and that's code for my wife. And then I did actually hire a sales consultant that's on our staff that she actually is more design minded. And so we're actually able to collaborate internally within our team to do this. But the next step that my business has been taking, and we started this endeavor about 6 months ago, is we've been actually reaching out to designers and offering to collaborate with them.
Very interesting. I'm assuming that those collaborations are with designers in like the Pacific Northwest region, because you that's your area of operation, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, cool. So the we kind of got away from it a little bit, but I do also want to cycle back to this one is talking about just conducting these energy audits in the first place. Because, you know,
Yeah.
say there's somebody, say there's an integrator in the audience that actually is like, they're a little bit interested, they want to get into that stuff now. Like, what does that entail? And, you know, what's like the buy-in like for that? Is there going
Oh
to
yeah.
be like a lot of equipment needed?
So when we started, I mean, we do like whole home energy auditing and whole home energy rating. And so, you know, we'll show up to a house with $10,000 worth of equipment, but I don't think that's at all necessary for guys that want to make a measurable impact and be able to demonstrate to clients what kind of a difference they can make. So when I say $10,000 worth of equipment, $9,000 worth of that is just to test the air leakage. That doesn't tell me any story about what they need for their windows. FLIR is just a thermal camera brand, FLIR, and what they offer is the ability to show to clients the temperature difference from their windows to their walls, right? And so you can buy a little $400 attachment that attaches to your cell phone, and you can actually use your cell phone camera to show the client that their window typically is 20 to 30% different in temperature than the wall next to it. If it's 30 degrees outside and your house is set to 70 degrees, and you look at the window through this $400 thermal camera that plugs right into your iPhone or Android phone, you can actually show them that their window is probably about 45 or 50 degrees while the wall right next to it is 70 degrees. It's legitimate and it's measurable. And then you can show them after you install those window treatments that now suddenly your window treatment is about 68 degrees right next to the 70-degree wall, and you're no longer radiating this cold into the house. And then if you don't want to have something that hooks up to your phone, FLIR also has options for range where you can walk around with a camera that's got a trigger, and you can take those pictures and show them to the clients in real time. We show up to all of our window treatment consultations with that on hand. And so that's not even somebody paid for an energy audit. We offer our window treatment consultations for free. I think that's pretty common in the industry. And then we just show up with the added value of the thermal camera and show them some of our observations with it.
Now, with that being said, with the split, because I would kind of assume that the way the business model would work would be like you come in, do an energy audit, and then you make a sale off of that energy audit. Is that usually the case, or is there like a split between the two?
There's actually a split. So the way we've marketed ourselves is we offer energy audits as a package, and then we offer window treatment consults. And that's just kind of where our design and our energy auditing have just kind of collided, and we just haven't gotten away from where we started. And so when we do the energy audit, I mean, our big push is still, you know, what's best for the consumer. Number one cause of energy loss is air leakage. And so what can we do to address your air leakage? And then, hey, by the way, we also made this observation. Would you like us to you know, come back and present to you some window treatment options?
Okay. I'm curious though, as far as like people coming to you in terms of, you know, they want window treatment, what is usually their complaint about it? Because, you know, in my head, I'm picturing like, you know, somebody might say that it's like, oh, I'm getting this horrible glare during the day that like I want mitigated. Like how, like what are the general complaints that people come to you with for wanting a window treatment?
So a lot. So I say this all the time. The sun hits differently here in the Pacific Northwest. And so we actually see a spike in our phone calls when the temperature first breaks 90 degrees. And anybody who's in the South or Southwest laughs at these numbers. But, you know, it gets 85, 90 degrees outside and everybody panics because, oh my God, my house is so hot. And we still build new construction out here without air conditioning. And so
Jesus.
yeah. And so we you know, we get those phone calls a lot as his temperature starts to creep up. And so we show up there with the thermal camera to show them it's like, yeah, your window is a problem. And we actually see on the inverse in the winter as well, where, you know, as soon as the temperatures start dropping, people have cold spots in their houses. They're like, I feel like my furnace is running all of the time. And, you know, I've never heard anybody that say that window treatments could be a solution.
That makes a whole lot of sense. It's actually kind of somewhat unrelated, but also somewhat related. There was a study that I read a while back that was talking about just kind of ways in which you can passively heat a house. And one of the things they suggested was, they did studies surrounding skylights that, when angled properly, they can do a pretty good job at like heating a house without needing anything else. And the area that they tested that in was in the Pacific Northwest because of the way the sun is set up there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's a real reality to that, and that's where like people have skylights, and it is always going to be the hottest room in your house. As soon as it breaks 85 degrees out here, it's like, why is it so hot in this room? I've got air conditioning, but this room is always hot. And so, and then of course, skylights are another great opportunity for automation because you can't reach your skylights. You don't, nobody wants to dig out the crank handle and crank it from the ground. And so great opportunity to automate it so that we can keep those guys closed in the summer and open them up during the night so you can see your stars. And then of course, inverse that in the winter where you're allowing in as much sunlight as possible while the sun is up, and then close it at night to trap that heat now in the house with something that we can measure the insulating value on, so that all that sunlight that you brought into the house to warm up that room isn't able to escape as soon as the sun drops. And now that window is the coldest thing in your room.
Right. And I think it's also safe to say that like this isn't something that is strictly relegated to the Pacific Northwest in terms of like a need. Because I mean, like I'm out on the East Coast in Massachusetts, so that I feel like we have pretty similar weather patterns compared to you guys. Just in terms of like, you got the really hot summers and you got the really brutal winters.
Yeah, well, no, and my wife is from Minnesota, and so we make a trip back there around Thanksgiving or Christmas every year, and you watch the routine, like, and it's just, people in those kind of climates, they were raised this way. The sun is up, you open all your window treatments. As soon as the sun goes down, somebody gets up from the table and walks around and closes all the window treatments, and it's just a natural trying to trap as much in the house as you can. And they're doing it with old fashioned blinds that their grandparents used to use, and it's just that's what we put in houses, and those probably have an R value of about 2. I mean, that's what you get out of wood.
Mhm.
And so by introducing different fabric options and stuff, we can significantly improve what's happening at those windows.
Yeah. And even out in like places like, we had mentioned like Texas and all the southern, the southwestern states, like it would basically be the inverse of that issue where, having all the old school window treatments, trying to deal with like, the 110 like days that they can have out there sometimes. It's gotta be a strain on the AC units that they have. So even out there is basically what I'm trying to say. Like these types
Yeah.
of window treatments would be probably very well received.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And so I'm telling you, go ahead and get a thermal camera and shoot the windows in your own home, and you'll see it. Even when the temperature is temperate, like on a normal day, significant temperature difference from your windows to the walls right next to them.
Interesting. So I don't want to hold you up too much longer. I just have like one question left in my satchel. Really after talking about all of that, it was like really great getting a chance to go really deep into just like how much shading can really affect like the insulation of a house. But I'm curious as to where what are the next steps for like Smart PNW? Like where are you guys kind of seeing your growth in? Because I know the last time we talked, you were mentioning opportunities in getting in on the ground floor of like newer constructions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of my big pushes to new construction builders is make those windows automation ready. It seems like such a low cost, affordable add-on for an electrician to do while he's already in there doing his thing. And it's one of those things where it's just you got an extra tag byline to add to your marketing to sell to your clients, and potential home buyers, even if you're building spec homes, if those windows are automation ready, then you tell the prospective homeowner, hey, these windows are already automation ready. Most other builders aren't offering that into the industry. So it's really a big add-on, and it sets up the homeowner to be able to, not have to change batteries every year in their window treatments, because their new construction home that they bought is ready to hook up and go with window treatments that we're able to automate. And I really do believe that is the future in construction, is especially where you're noticing in markets like Canada, they've outlawed all cords on window treatments. You can't have a cord over 8.5 inches in Canada, and they're pushing for those kind of safety things in the US market to protect children and pets, and just dangling cords are a hazard in a home. And so automated window treatments, because they're cordless, are kind of the future here. So yes, absolutely. If you're a new construction builder or you're working with new construction builders, yeah, get those windows automation ready. It's just kind of the next step. And I absolutely believe it's the future and the way we're doing windows.
Now, with your experience working with that, have you received, I mean, I have to imagine like getting any amount of change going is you're going to get a little bit of pushback. So like, how much pushback have you actually seen on trying to get these into new homes?
Well, spec home builders typically aren't ready to make the dive on it. But with custom home builders, guys that are building 5, 10, 15 houses a year, or they're already under contract with a client before they even break ground and submit permits on these, those guys are much more ready to have that kind of a conversation.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. It's definitely something that like I've been a lot more interested in hearing about it just from that perspective. I was at a KBIS in IBS earlier this year, and that was pretty much the conversation that I was hearing across the board from like all of the manufacturers there, where there's a big push now where it's like, for the longest time, these smart solutions have kind of been in the retrofit category. And now a lot of people are trying to get these incorporated into the new builds. Obviously for like, monetary purposes, they want to be able to have their products included in these homes. But, even I feel from just like being from a more consumer friendly standpoint, getting people introduced into smart homes in general, I feel like a lot of people are probably, the middle market homeowners are probably a lot more intimidated when they realize that they have to have all of this extra wiring added in. But to have that capability there from the start, more than likely going to make them more receptive to having this stuff brought in, especially now as we see that more and more homes are already just incorporating smart home products in general. I think the current statistic is that like every single home has at least like 1 or 2 smart home products in it at the moment.
Yeah, and that absolutely sounds right. And it's just, I mean, people don't even realize the type of smart home stuff that they're implementing into their homes. And Amazon is practically giving away free Echo devices with your Amazon Prime order, and it's just, I mean, but it really kind of is the direction that we're going. I mean, smart home devices really are going to be in every American home. Just like, I mean, nobody leaves their home without a phone in their pocket anymore. It's the way we're headed as a society. And again, I believe it's a safety thing too. I mean, nobody wants cords in their home, for protecting children and animals. And, it's just, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was great getting a chance to talk with you. Thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Nick, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the time.
Oh, absolutely. And, hopefully maybe one day we'll run into each other. I don't know how and I don't know where, but, I'm hoping for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I keep finding myself stumbling into more and more of these conferences. So one of these days we'll talk about it.